I remember when we first met back in November 2018 at the LA Auto Show, and you just unveiled your R1T battery electric pickup, but you basically came out of almost or more than 7 years of stealth mode. And since that time, you've made a lot of headlines. Bring us up to speed on where Rivian's at in terms of production and when we might see the R1T pickup delivered to customers and the R1S SUV as well.
As you said, we've made a lot of progress in the last couple of years. We're approaching our launch date. So we launch and start delivery of our R1T, the truck, in June of this coming year in 2021, and then the SUV shortly thereafter in August of 2021. And I'm actually sitting at the plant right now, and behind me is, you can see vehicles on the line coming down. So we've got a white one, a silver one, and another white one coming down as we speak. But we're in midst of really bringing the plant up and getting everything set in terms of quality systems, production systems. And it's not a small task because in parallel to launching the truck and the SUV, we're also building a vehicle for logistics for Amazon. And that's also going to be built here a bit further back in the facility. But nonetheless, that's launching in 2021 as well.
On the consumer cars, talk to me about the kind of pre-orders, level of pre-orders you've had and what you're targeting in terms of production volume initially in 2021 and then from that point onwards.
Yeah, the reaction to the product has been great. I mean, you and I met right as we were coming out of stealth and starting to show the product. We've still tried to be relatively quiet in terms of how we communicate and talk about what we're doing. Just in general, we like to let the product and our actions speak louder than words. So with that, what we've seen is just a great sort of level of interest, a groundswell of support for what we're doing. And, you know, the configurator launching this past week for pre-order customers was really fun. It was fun to see how people were configuring colors, you know, some surprises, some not so surprising. And then next week, this coming Monday, we unveil it we open the configurator to the general public.
So how many vehicles do you want to deliver next year, 2021?
Well, it's an interesting question. We're supply constrained for a very long time. Currently, with the orders we have, people will be in queue far longer than we'd like. So we had originally planned on a ramp up that had, you know, excess demand, massive supply constraints through 2023. We're now in the process of working to accelerate launch and accelerate ramp up, so that we can get customers their vehicles more quickly. But in terms of exact numbers, we haven't announced numbers for production or for pre-orders.
You've set out the specs and pricing for your launch generation of vehicles, but you've also teased ahead to a base model that's going to come later with a more modest 250 miles of range. What is that base model? You know, why start with a more expensive, higher spec offering and then later bring a base model to market? Yeah,
it's a really interesting question. I'm glad you asked, because what we have is different customers say, well, why don't you launch this one, the base version? Others say, why don't you launch the biggest pack first? And the challenge is in launching a production system is managing complexity. So what we ended up deciding to do was to make our launch edition what we call our large pack, our 300-mile plus pack. And we felt that covered the broadest set of customers. And then following that, we launched our larger pack. And then following that, we launched the smaller pack. And essentially between the three of those, we really fully cover the full demand curve. So, you know, folks that are looking for something in the 250 plus range and wanting to spend less money, and then also those that want the 400 plus miles. And that will take some time to build out that full portfolio. Again, just dealing with and managing the complexity of launching multiple variants within the plant.
So I think by this point, consumers, people out there are pretty familiar with what the R1T and the R1S looks like. But how can I buy one of these? Talk to me about what Rivian's plan is for sales, for retail, and also for servicing, keeping these vehicles on the roads and running.
Yeah, we've mostly talked about the product, as you said. We haven't really talked about all the things that have to sit, you know, behind the product to support it. Everything from delivery to retail to financing, insurance, and then very importantly, service. So as we speak, we're building out a very large service network. We'll have 41 service centers, service locations in 2021. Along with that, a vast majority of our service will actually be done with mobile service, meaning we'll come to your house, we'll come to your place of work, and we can fix the vehicle there. And We estimate that's over 80% of service activity. So there's a large fleet of mobile service vans being built as well. And along with that, we're building out our charging infrastructure and what we call our Rivian Adventure Network. And essentially, the goal of that is to make it seamless, to make it easy to go anywhere, whether that is going out to the mountains for the weekend or driving from Northern California to Southern California. We want to make those types of trips really sort of thoughtless. You don't have to worry about how you're going to charge it, where you're going to charge it. And for that reason, we took the decision to vertically build a charging solution and then a network in-house.
So how does that work in practice? I'm driving up to Tahoe for the weekend. It's a long way for me to go from the Bay Area. Talk to me about how I would charge my vehicle on the go under the system that you guys are looking at.
Well, first, we're using a charging standard that's common with essentially all vehicles. It's called the CCS standard. So this allows the vehicles to use other third-party networks, and there's a number of them. But our feeling is that the value of creating our own CCS network is that we can really ensure the customer experience, payments platform, availability, charging speed, the ability to reserve charging slots or know the vehicle knows it needs to be charged in those locations, makes it really seamless. So if you're driving from the Bay Area to Tahoe, along the way you'd stop, you'd pull in, you pull the charger out, you plug it in the car, and the rest takes care of itself. You're not worried about payments. You're not worried about connecting with the charger or making it. It's just very simple. It plugs right in. And then when you're setting out on that trip, you'd say, these are the types of things I'd like to do at the stop. I'm looking to get some food. I'm looking to go for a hike. And depending on your preferences, we would direct you to different charging locations.
It's no secret that America has a love for bigger cars. The light truck category makes up the vast majority of new car sales. What differentiates your electric pickup principally, but also the SUV from existing gas cars and will make it an attractive option for buyers traditionally of pickup trucks?
Yeah, for a long time, when we've looked at trucks or SUVs, we sort of looked at them through the lens of compromise, meaning if you want a truck or if you want an SUV, you're going to have to compromise on efficiency. You're probably compromising on its ride and handling characteristics. And you're doing that to gain, either capability off-road or functionality in terms of carrying things. What we wanted to do is we wanted to take those compromises between on-road driving dynamics, off-road driving dynamics, function and utility and refinement, and then of course all of those things and efficiency, and eliminate those things that we've typically had to trade off against one another, and make sure the vehicle is incredibly fun to drive on-road, incredible off-road, high function, high utility in terms of its ability to fit stuff, people, kids, pets, gear, and then do all that in a platform that's also very refined and most importantly, very efficient. So it required us to redesign the whole platform and the architecture, of course, around an electric layout, giving us a lot of space for things like storage and allowing us to create a really comfortable occupant compartment. And then the drivetrain, the chassis, and the suspension system was set up to give the vehicle this duality of personality, where it's very refined and very capable on-road, but also very rugged and capable in the most extreme off-road conditions, combined into the same vehicle.
Talk to me about where the demand is coming from. Who are the buyers of electric pickup trucks and electric SUVs? Where are they geographically? Where do you see the most demand coming from?
Probably the most exciting thing is it's not like it's pulling from a single pool. Because the vehicles themselves are challenging the existing trade-offs, on-road versus off-road, utility versus refinement, we're seeing customers come out of just about everything. Of course, coming out of pickups, but often and more likely coming out of SUVs, coming out of other electric vehicles, coming out of passenger cars, sedans, even sports cars. And what we see with that shift is a surprising number of new EV customers that haven't previously owned an EV, that are now excited about the attributes that the vehicle is delivering, so much so that they're willing to try a new propulsion technology.
In the full-size pickup segment, which is basically the largest in terms of retail segment by dollar value, it's dominated by the likes of Ford, the likes of GM and Fiat Chrysler or Dodge. Are there any particular models that you think that you will go after in terms of conquesting that market? Any particular segments where you think you will do better than others?
I think what we've found and what we believe is for customers that are really looking to enable themselves to be active, meaning carry kids, gear, pets, the vehicles are really optimized for that. They're really ideal. They're also vehicles that they're very capable, but we intentionally exercised a lot of restraints in making sure that the design had a refinement to it and a timelessness to it that really created a sort of a premium feel and premium experience. With that, it ends up pulling in interest from across just about every segment and every type of vehicle. And I wouldn't say there's any specific vehicle, and certainly not any specific truck that we'll be pulling from.
Before we move on to Amazon, I just want to ask finally about the pickup truck. Is there any demand from fleet buyers, from commercial vehicle owners for the pickup truck in particular?
There is some. The vehicle has been designed not for fleet application. I mean, it could certainly be used in that. It's capable of it, but its intended use is for more consumer activities. And when you look at the nature of it, it's 0 to 60 mile per hour acceleration in about 3 seconds. It's capable of extreme on-road handling, similar to what you find in a sports car. And then it's capable of going off-road in a way that really no vehicle on the market today can go off-road. So those attributes, coupled with all the everyday usability of large front trunk and really comfortable, refined cabin, lend it much more to a consumer-oriented vehicle than a fleet-oriented vehicle. Certainly on the fleet side and on the commercial side, we're focused on that as well, but on a different platform and a different vehicle. That's with our Amazon van.
Well, let's talk about Amazon then. Amazon is...
That's a completely different problem statement, but very similar technology. So battery system, drive system, all of our ECUs, our network architecture, our software stacks, a tremendous amount of reuse between the vehicles despite the massive difference in application.
Amazon is an investor in Rivian as well as a customer. How does that relationship work? Does Amazon have an active say in the engineering and production of the delivery vans that you're working on? Do they take a back seat? How much do you borrow from Amazon's expertise in terms of looking at logistics and the end use case for those delivery vans?
Yeah, this is a really exciting program for a few reasons. I think first and foremost, the logistics space and the last mile delivery space so badly needs to electrify for many reasons. From a climate change point of view, of course, but also from a air quality point of view, particularly in the urban air quality point of view. So there's a lot of excitement just around helping to raise the bar in the logistics and last mile space to really drive other companies, other fleet operators to start to electrify their fleets. But beyond just the electrification, what this vehicle represents is an opportunity to really rethink how a vehicle is architected, how it's set up from an ingress, egress, getting in, getting out, a packaging point of view, to be optimized to create really an ultimate work environment for a delivery driver. And so safety, getting in and out, loading and unloading packages. These are all things we've had a lot of fun working closely with Amazon, who understands that incredibly well. To set up the vehicle design and the attributes to really be, again, optimized for that use case. And then lastly, what's fun is these are vehicles that are going to be run in a centrally controlled fleet. And because the fleet's centrally controlled, the ability to be deterministic around how we think about maintenance or predictive maintenance and look at reliability in a very predictive way allows us to run the fleet very efficiently and in a way that you can't really control the vehicles with a consumer-facing vehicle.
What is Rivian's competitive advantage when it comes to delivery vans? You're taking on the likes of Ford, who are also an investor in the company, but there are others out there like Daimler. What is it that Rivian does well that makes your delivery van or commercial vehicle an attractive option for fleet operators?
I think most importantly is when you look at a vehicle, and especially a connected electric vehicle, the deep expertise that's necessary in a few areas where one needs to really vertically integrate. So battery systems, drive systems, those are probably pretty predictable in that those are areas that we vertically integrate and have a lot of very strong core competency. But more important in many ways is the digital ecosystem on the vehicle. So that's all the compute platforms, that's the software stacks on the vehicle, that's the sensor sets on the vehicle. And by controlling that digital backbone of the vehicle. It allows us to integrate with the way we run the fleet. It allows us to integrate with how we perform maintenance on it, allows us to integrate with charging strategies. So there's a lot of operational advantages one gets from really deeply controlling all the electronics, all the software within the vehicle. And those were areas we focused heavily on, and have spent many years developing those systems.
Before we finish, I just want to talk a little bit about the business. Do you see a future where Rivian sells emissions credits to other automakers?
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, the emissions credits environment is always in a constant state of evolution. We will be generating excess credits, and those have a value in the marketplace today. But how that unfolds in the future, it's always that's always a bit of an unknown.
You've raised a lot of funds over the last 2 years. Have you any thoughts about taking the company public?
No, we've been fortunate to have a really strong set of strategic investors, as you said, Amazon, Ford, Cox, but also some very strong financial investors, T. Rowe Price, Fidelity. These are great institutions that have backed us and provided us with a tremendous amount of capital. We've raised about $6 billion in capital over the last several years. And that allows us, fortunately, to just put our heads down and focus. And the organization is heads down, focused on launching 3 products in 2021. And when you think about that, between the truck, the SUV, and the Amazon vehicle, launching between June and the fall, there's a lot of complexity we have to digest really quickly to build and launch the vehicles, but then to set up all the back-end operations we talked about. So service, retail, charging, across those different platforms and across all the markets. So fortunately, we've been able to just stay heads down, focused on execution, and investors are 100% supportive of that. And that's where our focus will remain as over the next year.
And in terms of the business plan, is there a level or scale of production that you need to hit to become profitable based on the margins you expect on the vehicle, the business plan that you have in place?
It depends on the pricing on the vehicle variant in terms of how quickly we reach profitability. For us as a business, because we're going to be launching other products, a lot of other products beyond what we've shown and talked about so far, we're going to continue investing pretty heavily and therefore continuing to consume capital by design. In terms of unit economics, one of the things that's been important for us is vertical integration on some of these key areas helps us create really structural cost advantages in how we build the vehicle. And those structural cost advantages, we think are important, not just in terms of making sure that we can be a successful, profitable business, but I'd say more importantly, from a consumer point of view, is it allows us to bring prices down and to continually make our vehicles more accessible. And that becomes really true on our next generation of products, where the form factors and the size of these vehicles are also smaller.
What are Rivian's ambitions outside of North America?
So for us, as we look at the global market, just to zoom out here for a moment, there's well over 1 billion cars on the planet. In terms of passenger miles, driving well over 10 trillion with a T, 10 trillion miles. And the vast majority of those, more than 99.5% of those are combustion fuel vehicles. So we as a planet need to really quickly, if we're really committed to addressing climate change, which is the whole reason I started the company, and it's our core focus, is we have to get the gasoline and combustion powered vehicles off the roads and replace them with much more efficient electric vehicles that have a pathway to being carbon neutral. Of course, with the grid also cleaning up. So to do that, it means, we need to focus as a company, and I'd say as an industry, on more than just the US. And we see electrification happening very strongly throughout the rest of the world. Certainly we see it in Europe, and certainly we see it throughout Asia. So for us, these are important markets, and these are markets that our product portfolio will go into. And as we launch future versions of our future variants in our portfolio, especially the smaller form factor variants, we see those fitting really nicely into Europe and fitting really nicely into China. So the whole business, the vehicle platforms, and the architectures were set up from the beginning to support sales in across the world, not just the United States, but in Europe and in Asia and throughout the rest of the world.
Finally, President-elect Biden has some pretty clearly stated policies when it comes to clean energy and also electric vehicles. What do you think a Biden administration would mean for the vision that you just outlined? Do you see a Biden administration putting the United States and perhaps the world on a quicker timeline for electrification?
We talk about this a lot internally. You have, in terms of electrifying the world, you have two sort of sides of it. You have what's happening in the corporate world, meaning what are companies doing and how are they helping to drive that? And then, of course, the products that they create, causing customers to make that switch. And then you have the regulated side. And what can policy, what can tax structures do to help accelerate that? And we're seeing increasingly across the world, many major, major markets, countries that have lots and lots of sales, driving targets towards 100% electrification for new vehicle sales. We see that across Europe. We see that across China. So I think that's a very good thing for the world. I think it's a necessary thing to help make this shift faster. And of course, we're watching very closely to see what happens here in the United States. And we hope that the US will be a leader in helping to create and drive policy that makes it easier for consumers to make that switch, and also makes it easier for manufacturers, all of us, to drive towards that future state.